This podcast is sponsored by Skylight Frame. If you're looking for a great holiday gift, there is nothing more meaningful than a Skylight digital picture frame. Skylight is a touchscreen frame that everyone in the family can send photos to from anywhere, and they'll pop up in seconds. It is the perfect gift for new families, parents and grandparents, or anyone who has all of their photos stuck on their phone. With Skylight, you can actually preload photos before you give it as a gift, without even opening the box. Once it's unwrapped and plugged in, the frame will light up with all those special memories. Surprise your loved ones this year with a beautiful Skylight frame, now available in multiple sizes and colors. Grab yours today because they're very popular and sell out around the holidays. For a limited time, you can get $15 off your purchase when you go to skylightframe.com/Mary. That's right. To get $15 off your Skylight frame, just go to skylightframe.com/Mary. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/Mary.
At Sleep Outfitters Outlet, great sleep is a big deal. Save 40 to 60% every day on every Sealy, Stearns & Foster, and Tempur-Pedic. Queens as low as $249. Customer exchanges, closeouts, and floor samples. Inventory changes daily, so come in for your dream deal today. With no credit needed financing, expert advice, and up to 60% off retail, it's never been easier to get the sleep and savings you deserve. Go to sleepoutfittersoutlet.com for financing details and to find a store near you.
Expanding reality.
Welcoming back, we have returning soul sister Amy Belair. How the hell are you?
I am doing great, Brandon. Always excited to be with you and have a conversation with you. It's the best.
Just joyous times amongst. It's insane how we get together and you know, have phone conversations every now and then because we're system brother here. And when we speak, it's just always like, oh my God, what have you been doing? And I'm like, oh my God, we've been doing this. And like you have been doing so many amazing things and just things around us. Our tribe has just been exponentially growing so much. And it's just been so cool. But to catch up with you and to be able to see what you've been doing and just to hear about some new things, for you and I to just talk shit about the Matrix for a little bit, I'm extremely excited about this. So we could skip all the, nudities, all your the other ways to find you, and everything will be located down in the show notes, as well as where you introduced yourself for the audience on the other episodes that you were here. So we could skip all that and just get straight to the how the hell are you and what have you been up to?
Woohoo!
Yeah.
I am really good. I am, well, okay. So my perception of the energy of this year is that it's a physical manifestation quantum leap year. Last year felt like a consciousness expansion quantum leap year. So the physical was preceded by the expansion of our consciousness really significantly last year is how it felt to me. And then this year, it's like the hologram is catching up. It's rearranging itself to manifest in accordance to however we expanded. And so, that's a fun ride to ride if you are somebody who is a consciousness expansion thrill seeker, meaning that you really care about your consciousness and you cultivate it for its own benefit, right? Like not to manifest, but just to feel better in your thoughts and in your being. So I'm feeling like this is a really fun ride to ride right now. And I'm also learning how to slow down because last year was like, oh my God, it was just so much information coming through all the time. And I'm like, ooh, we can chill out. We do not have to try and keep up with all of it.
Yes, it's so funny you say this. I'm going to rip this off of I have sticky notes all over the place with all sorts of wonderful things. One of the most valuable ones that I wrote myself this year was that
slow down.
Just says slow down. And it's right there wherever I'm looking. Usually I'm like, right here's where I get things done quickly. And I just glance over and I'm like, oh yeah. And it's been one of the nicest things. And so I'm grateful that you also intuitively were thought to rather embrace the suck, like a lot of us have been doing, is embrace the pause because it enables you to avoid most of the suck if you can just pause and slow down. But that seems to be a very elevated, thought that we've gotten to from the not of slowing down. The rushing through everything. I mean, first year and a half of this show, I slept maybe 2 and 4 hours a night. I was just cranking things, and it was insane. And 60-hour work weeks with 2-hour commutes and. It was stupid. But now it's all about this slow down, just slow the hell down. And like you said, also because of that, I think that for all of it, 2021, and especially 2022, it was just this grind. It felt like this excited. We're happy to be here. We're putting it all out. And now the slowdown, mentally, to where we're not so, not unmotivated, but it's just not, we don't feel the eagerness to sacrifice our balance and peace to be able to do the things. You know what I mean? Is that how you felt as well?
Totally. And I feel like sometimes there is a season in our life that requires, or where the energy is right for that kind of like hustle and grind, so to speak, but it's not sustainable forever. And there has to come a point where consciously we're like, okay, that season is over. And now I have to slow down. And it can feel hard sometimes because it's like trying to slow down a freight train that's going at a pretty good clip.
That's exactly it. And what's interesting too is, like you said, the energy of this year feels like that we did do that, but that all the energy just sort of compiled behind us and just compounded on everything and just smushed everything forward. And that's sort of what we're living in, is that, what Bashar calls about manifestation folks, about the echo of where, like, you set these intentions, you're crushing, you're journaling, you're doing it. And then you're like, where the hell is it? Oh, there it is. It's right when you get on the other side of this time period. It seems to be a physical time period, but that's what's interesting too, because in manifestation, all those things they talk about, it could happen in a second. Like, you could go from where you are financially to where you want to be financially with a phone call or an email, and it can happen like that. But also with this, there seems to be, again, sort of like this manifestation fatigue that I went through. Did you experience this?
What do you mean? Tell me about it.
Yeah, to where I was just constantly mentally attempting to attract things. And it's whenever I stopped doing that, when I figured out that just being in alignment. And so I just go, oh, well, I'll just focus on being alignment. That's when all the shit just started flowing in. And it just seemed like I got fatigued from manifesting, from being so mindful about focusing on what I wanted and what I didn't want. Does that make sense? And to a point where I was just exhausted.
Yeah, I did experience that. And it's funny because I keep wanting to record a reel about it. It's too long to be a story, and it has to last, like, it's an important piece that I don't hear people talk about often enough. But I haven't gotten around to it yet. But people who talk about manifestation as like part of their thing that they do, part of their content, a lot of the times I don't feel like they really give enough, I don't know. I was going to say like honor or credit. I don't know if that's the right. They just don't give enough acknowledgement to that part of the process where your mind gets on board, and then it's like a fucking dog on a bone. Your mind is like, this is what I'm doing. Like, manifest, manifest, manifest. And it's almost like, for me, it feels like a really messy process, because it's like the rest of my consciousness and the whole universe and all the, like, the guides and the angels and all the team, whatever. They're like, oh, isn't her mind so cute that
you say, bless your heart,
it's doing the thing, right? And it kind of like, our minds are like a toddler, and you just have to like wait it out and let the mind freak out, and be like, where is it? Where is it? And I'm like, I'm focusing so much, to the point where you like start to hate your manifestation, almost your desire. And then you surrender, and then it comes in. And it's so humbling, because I personally believe that I'm a really good manifester, very, very good. And I still go through that period. Like last year, the growth that I was calling in was really significant. And it was like my consciousness had to expand first. And I kept waiting for the physical, reflection. But I think when we're calling in something really big, a lot has to shuffle internally before it can actually come into our physically manifested reality. But the whole time, instead of being in alignment, my mind is like trying to visualize the thing and like journal about the thing and do the thing and do the thing. Even though I know how this works, I know you have to surrender. I know you have to just let it go and like shift from, well, I think part of it is that we still are all under the, the illusion of the law of attraction instead of the law of assumption.
Right.
Because when you're functioning by the law of assumption, where you're like, I know that this is 100% guaranteed as long as I'm not pushing it away. And so I'm just going to like chill out and enjoy myself and let it come in. Then it can come in with so much ease. But as long as we're sort of focused on this, like the secret crap, and which is only crap because it's just part of the whole equation. But like we've received this indoctrination that we have to think about it all the time, and we have to, have pictures of $1 million checks on our ceiling or whatever Bob Proctor said, and,
Yep.
and then that's when it's going to come in. But it's really like our mind just needs to, our mind is like a toddler. Just take it to the park and give it some ice cream and call it a day, and let the stuff come in while the mind is distracted with the joy of living.
Yeah, you've nailed it with this. It's really about that new information and then being in a state of nonchalance with it. I've compared it to like ordering a pizza. It's like you don't order a pizza and then call the guy every 5 minutes to see where your pizza's at. It's in the route, right? But being obsessed about when it's going to get here, if they made it properly, oh, did I forget the breadsticks? Are they going to get extra Parmesan? Whatever. Like all of those little ways in which it occurs, right? The how, and really releasing the how is like one of the trickier things, especially with the programs. It's not impossible, because that's where I find myself now is I'll be aware that I'm starting the how process in my mind, this Newtonian sort of like cause and effect. Oh, well, if I then, and when, then I'll, right? And so you get in those sort of things, but I'll catch it real quick. I'm like, we don't do that anymore. That's no longer part of our paradigm moving forward. It's something I'm very able to catch and recognize quickly. And thank you, Thought Ninja. He's on it when it comes to that kind of shit. And so it has been this just rewording of because before, as I was articulating it, I articulated it very carefully when I said I was trying to attract. And it was in that point of being this not sure, like having the information, but not the awareness. And so sitting with the information and playing with it for a long time and trying to string this into something finally gave me the awareness to surrender. That's when I understood the words. That's because I'd heard the concept of nonchalance from Abraham Hicks for decades. But then I was sitting here like, oh, got it. That's when it started connecting to the surrender and to the inflow and to the feeling, not the thing. And it all made sense, because any of those one things just didn't ring the bell for me by itself. But it did feel like, especially as we start to learn this, and you nailed it with this toddler's idea, whenever they like learn something new, when I'm still super guilty of this. I'll look at something and I'll just go for it real quick. I'm just like, holy shit. And then I'll step back and kind of analyze or whatever. But it's easy sort of to get excited about the new things, especially when you can see how the impact, the ramifications, especially on these massive things like this. There's this dude I had on with this sovereign citizen thing where he's talking about completely saying fuck the government and pulling out of it, but in a legal, sweet way and not like getting tased constantly and shit. And it's really lit me up in the way that manifestation did, in the way that like, holy shit, there's like something huge here to this. But now it's having the information, but then gaining the awareness with it. So I'm in the process of unpacking that and going through that course, which has been fascinating. It's been very, very interesting. So something I'll pass this dude along to you. He's very interesting.
Yeah, I need to check that out, because actually I never registered William's birth because I just had him at home by myself. And so, he didn't have to, he has a health card because I live in Ontario. But he doesn't have a social insurance number or a birth certificate or anything like that so far. And I'm like, ooh, like if I don't know the law, then this is probably going to not be good. But if I know the law, then I can make it work. But I just want him to be sovereign and free.
Yeah, and samesies. And we've got to get together on this conscious parenting thing we're doing with Spencer and Heather and Human Vibe. There's a bunch of people in this thing. So we'll talk about it. I'll get you on the next meeting, especially. But there's a lot of folks that are just over this shit and doing what you're doing, having them at home, unschooling or homeopathic methods instead of running people off to urgent care in the hospital for every little nick and cut, right? And so it's been this like sweeping movement for sovereignty, and we're seeing it on a big level. I'll get you in contact with this dude. His name is Brandon Williams, another Brandon out there representing Horde. And this guy is just empowered with information. He's done so much research. Everything's cited. Like we sat there and went over definitions for like 2.5 hours, and I was glued, like absolutely glued. It was fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's all about semantics. It's the same things we talk about with NLP, right? With neuro-linguistic programming. This is what's been done to our legal system here in the States, and I'm absolutely certain it's been done to yours as well. It's that there's a beautiful system underneath there that's absolutely empowering, that's had a parasite seated over the top of it. It uses the same language. You've got it. It uses the same words, but it capitalizes them rather than lowercases them. So therefore, it's an entity and a company rather than what it actually is, which is a territory and American rather than citizen of the US, which is a company. Like, it's fascinating when you really look into this. Yeah. And so it's those sort of semantics, right? Rather than trying, we're doing, but rather than this way of apprehending your freedoms and liberties. You actually can do it this way and not be a douchebag about it. You know, the way he recalled this, and I know we've talked about a lot of this about Age of Aquarius, what's happening right now astrologically, this that, you know, Pluto's return signified the last time it was around was the French Revolution, right? And so there's all these things occurring right now that are absolutely upheaval ready from the perspective of an older civilization. But like Brandon said in that interview, and this is what really set me off with this dude, was it's 1776 without the bodies. So we don't need to go guillotined out, murdering in the streets and all this. It's an up level in consciousness, sort of at a sweeping level, 100th monkey effect style, to where we don't all have to get wrapped up in like, you know, fucking yelling Wolverines and running over the hill, you know, at shit that's invaded our land and parachuted on. Like, it's silly. It doesn't need to be like that. And this is more the mindset I've got. And I know you do with it as well. It's just we're out, you know, you guys go do your thing. Thanks for, you know, so long. And thanks for all the fish. Like, we're out.
Totally. I have this program that I'm running. It's an entire year long as I record it live. You know, in the future, people can just binge it if they want. But right now, I'm doing a piece of content every week and a masterclass every month. And I'm working through all of the chakras, like, so the base 7 chakras, but then also all the transpersonal chakras and all the 12 strands of DNA and the 12 dimensions. And it's all about false matrix emancipation. So it's like recognizing through each chakra the fuckery that has occurred, that has basically, like, you know, the different kind of trauma programs and like astral implants, mind control implants, different things like that that affect us at different chakra levels that keep us tethered into or like bound within this system. So my expertise is not like, I love hearing, it just makes me so happy when there are people whose gift it is to do all that research.
Yeah.
Because that's not my gift. My gift is the psychic part, where I can just like look at the chakras and be like, oh my God, this is what they're doing to us. This is how they're screwing us over. But great news, this is how we self-emancipate, because we totally can. We just have to be aware of it and then just make new choices. And it's not even hard, actually. It's just I think the hardest part is that we all carry a lot of trauma, and most of us are really afraid to look at it and feel it. And so we, you know, culturally, at least, I can only really speak for the Western culture because I'm not familiar enough with the way the rest of the world does things. But in the Western culture, we tend to just numb out, and we just eat, we have sex, we do drugs, we drink, we consume entertainment media, like watch sports, that kind of stuff. And it's all basically to avoid looking at the trauma. But that's where the false matrix parasites live, is in the trauma.
Yeah, it's right there. And transcending it is when you can see it. You can see it feeding on you from that state. You're just like, oh, but if you're in it, it's very tricky to, and even unbelievably so, which is fascinating as well. So I want to talk to you more about this false matrix emancipation. This is fascinating because it's real world shit that we're talking about doing over here as well. But this is even further and deeper real world shit, because this is the deep structures of things that you're talking about withdrawing from. So what's one that you're most excited about that you could share with us, maybe?
Well, do you want to pick a chakra to help me narrow it down? Because there's so many.
Yes, actually, solar plexus. Because I'm curious about this. This is one that has a big impact, and I've heard has a big impact. So I'd like to hear your take on it.
Yeah. So the solar plexus is a really beautiful chakra because basically it's the way that I perceive it is that we are the sun and the sun is us. And I know that if you like totally believe the whole, you know, thing that NASA has given us, then that sounds crazy. And I sound like a hippie, but you're listening to Expanding Reality. So you're probably cool. But I think this is the reason that we're seeing all of this solar activity, because the more we awaken, the more active the sun becomes. The more active the sun becomes, the more we awaken, because it's one and the same thing. It's just it's a reflection. I believe that it's our oversoul, our collective human earth consciousness oversoul, possibly our solar system oversoul. I don't know, because I don't know. I still don't know what outer space is, but regardless, it's like our consciousness represented as a ball of light. And we each carry it's like a sun drop in our solar plexus. And it's a unique configuration of the codes of that totality consciousness. It's not God. I'm not saying that's like the whole thing, but we each carry, it's like having a thumbprint, or it's like a snowflake. It's like each is individual and unique. And so the solar plexus, when it functions properly, it's us just generously radiating and emanating this unique coding of light that is a necessary piece of the puzzle, that when we're all radiating that from a place of balance, we recreate the sun together on Earth. I don't know if this is making sense, but obviously we're super heavily traumatized. So the solar plexus is also the seat of our power. And it's where, and part of our power is that we are guardians of free will. So we choose in every single moment of every day, micro choices, macro choices. It's impossible to not have free will here. And free will is absolutely sacrosanct. It can't actually be violated. That's why we hear people talking about, revelation of the method and all that kind of crap. It's because they can't, the false matrix overlords, as I call them, they can't actually completely violate free will without massive karmic repercussions, which they don't want. So they feed us predictive programming and they tell us what they're doing so that we agree to it. And it's like their workaround. But we are the guardians of free will, which means that we walk the razor's edge between the dark and the light all the time. And each of us can go as much one way as we can the other. So for all of us who consider ourselves to be light workers, I think one of the things that's being asked of us is that we no longer hold sort of a flavor of self-righteousness and smugness that's like, I'm here for the light, as if our shit doesn't stink, right? As if when we fart, it's all like roses and butterflies. It's not. We can go to the dark side under the right circumstances as much as any other person, any other soul, because we live in the third dimension. And so both of those options are available to us equally. And it's very powerful that we have that, like, we really are the guardians of it. We are the ones that have the ability to hold that power and do so with integrity. And it requires a lot of self-awareness, which we have been deliberately conditioned out of, so that the majority of, at least humans, again, in Western society, are lacking in self-awareness. And it's not because they're not intelligent. It's because of all that trauma. You don't want to be self-aware. There's so much trauma in there. And then meanwhile, we're given all these ways to numb out and not be self-aware. And that's what we've chosen. And it gets handed down behaviorally through the generations. Another form of power that we have in the solar plexus is that we are causal agents. And I actually believe that all of the false matrix overlords, whatever, like, I affectionately call them the lizard turds.
Yeah.
But I believe that they are not of any particular species. I do believe that they are fallen angelics, and they don't have bodies. They were not created to be here, and they were not created to have free will. I just don't believe the angelics were created to have free will. I've had some memories of being in the angelic realms, and humans are uniquely given this like trifecta of amazingness, which is we exist within, I'm going to use the word God, but it can be source, whatever anybody prefers. I'm not trying to be religious here, but we exist within God's creation or source's creation. And we are creators. We were given the ability to create, and we were given free will. So we get to exist here, experience it through our senses in this brilliant, vivid, sensorial experience. And then we get to create freely within it. It's so coveted. They covet it so much. So what they do is they get us to abdicate our own bodies as much as possible, again, through numbing activities, so that they can hop on for the ride and hopefully eventually take over, because they don't have bodies. The closest they can get is the astral. I believe that all of this warfare is happening in the astral plane, which is the fourth dimension, and it doesn't even exist beyond the fourth dimension. And so because we have bodies, and we are like, our bodies are created to be here, and our consciousness is adapted to our bodies. We are causal agents. Every single thing that we do every day affects and impacts this reality. Even if you're sitting in meditation, or even if you're in a coma, you're still affecting this reality profoundly. Your breath is affecting the coma. You're in a coma, and you have loved ones that care. Even if you don't have loved ones, you have medical staff that is, monitoring your vital signs while you're in a coma. You are dramatically impacting this reality. So in the solar plexus, it's like we've been separated. I also believe the solar plexus is where the sort of we've really come to realize ourselves as the Trinity embodied. So we are the divine child of Mother, Father, God. And we are the third strand of DNA. The words are something along the lines of, I am a royal son or daughter of Mother, Father, God. And, basically it's talking about how myself, every individual self that we are, is an invaluable note in the symphony of all creation. And we have been convinced otherwise. And so what happens in the solar plexus is we kind of tend to go one way or the other. We either become Wolf of Wall Street, power maniacs, but it's very out of balance and there's no spirituality to ground it. Or we go to the other extreme where we kind of involute on ourselves and apologize for ourselves. And we're like, oh, God forbid I should take up too much space, or God forbid I should be proud of myself because that's bragging, or, boastful, or whatever kind of thing. And then we also have experienced all this trauma of being belittled and criticized, and the many, many lifetimes where we have participated as, I believe that probably, I'll just say most of us, I don't want to speak in absolutes, but most of us have had at least one lifetime where we have been the aggressor that has hurt somebody else, because free will exists here. And so there's just piles and piles and piles of things that we would rather not ever look at. But that is the perfect home for the parasites to be great, you want to abdicate your power? Awesome. I will just worm right in there and I'll start taking it for a joyride.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Have you had Elsa Dillon on the show yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh, I'm on it. I'm on it, audience. I'm on it. Everybody out there is just oh my God, how have you gone this long without connecting her? Okay. Elsa, Australian, absolutely fascinating. Her family of 10, she has 8, her and her husband have 8 children, and they all communicate with incredible beings. 3 of her daughters paint them and they're beautiful. It's over 300 or 500 different beings. But one of the things she talks about in this is this idea that it's really the ETs and everything. ETs come on comets. So come ET, comet, right? And there's bacteria and ancient DNA and everything on that from water that's ancient that we've not experienced yet on Earth that has codes in it. So this is the same thing like what Colleen's talking about.
Yes, totally.
Yes. And so with that, though, she says diet is die ET, because it's the ETs in your gut, your actual microbiome that are affecting everything, your vibe, your everything. Yes. So what you're talking about, and especially when we're speaking of internal energy systems such as chakras, they'd be affected by this. And we all know this. Your health is affected. Your health affects things, especially in the physical. And so these root chakra, these lower impulses that the matrix seems to be very fond of keeping you in are to do so to feed basically this bacteria that's been here, or this virus rather, not a bacteria. And so it is more of a parasite type of a thing. But how you kill it is what these gurus do. Go on fasts, cold plunges, be healthy, be happy, don't get caught up in the cytokine storm and all of this stuff. So it's these fascinating things of all of good energy, good vibes, that will literally kill harmful parasites and bacteria in you, which was what we're talking about, what Elsa talks about maybe the whole goddamn thing here, like the UFOs and the aliens and all that shit. We were even talking about that maybe, perhaps, I mean, you know how we go, that UFOs, physical ones that fly over you, are just sort of a distraction, sort of a, hey, look over here. There's nothing going on here. Look over here. This is what we really are. And maybe that's even a collection of a virus or something that can form that, like fish that form a huge school around to look like a larger predator than they really are, than not like a bunch of individual ones, but they'll form a huge school, strength in numbers sort of thing, like a size thing. And maybe they do that on a cellular level and then build a UFO and shit. There's a lot of properties here, such as the cavity structure effect and things to where like bees and stuff hover naturally. Like there's a lot of interesting things. The same way that, what is it? The fish that swim up river, trout, what they're doing is they're going through these toroidal vortexes in the current. They're not swimming up. They're being shot like a rocket up the river, but they're these forces that are here all the time. So it's this idea of this, like, look over here. But again, it could be a collection of all these small things, just like we are. We're just a collection of a shitload of little cells. And so it's interesting, maybe this is our UFO as an alien, really. It's our body is the UFO. We've constructed it out of these cells. It was birthed through a portal, and then we inhabit it. But the entity that's driving this thing can be switched out, like a Voltron or something. You can have a new passenger jump in, like the Mr. Smith effect or something, to where if your vibe gets low enough, you can just be a representative for these bacteria or this internal system that's going on that is a representative of the Matrix. It's fucking wild.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, all of that stuff that you're talking about is stuff that I think about all the time these days, because like all of it. So I'll share that about a month ago, I started to feel like last year I had or starting at the end of 2021, I had really bad autoimmune flare up and topical steroid withdrawal. And it like turned into, you can't even call it eczema. It was just a whole other thing, but basically like massive detox through my skin. And I could kind of feel it just as like the subtle signs. About a month ago, my body was like, you have to, all right, it's time. Like what you were doing worked, but now it's not, you have to switch it up again. And I was like, okay, body, I know you're serious. Yeah. I'm going to listen. So I did this cleanse. It was a colon cleanse. And have you ever heard of mucoid plaque?
Yes, but please go over it again.
Okay. So apparently its existence is under debate. I don't know why, but apparently colonoscopists or like, I don't know, colon specialists say that they've never seen it on a colonoscopy. And certain people that do autopsies say that they've never seen like a mucoid plaque in somebody that they're dissecting, a cadaver that they're dissecting. I don't know how, like what they are doing, but I'll tell you, mucoid plaque is real. So what it is it's like a rubbery, basically your entire intestine is a mucosa. So the inside of your mouth is a mucosa, meaning that you have saliva. It's not the same as the skin on the outside of our body. It is moist and highly porous and absorptive, and it also produces mucus to protect itself. So because we eat highly processed things here, things that aren't even actually food, they're just poison and they're flavored to be delicious, our intestines produce more mucus than they probably are meant to. And that mucus eventually like hardens and becomes this rubbery substance. And it can be black or brown or green. And it carries a lot of like biofilms, the same that develop in our teeth around our mouths. So like little films of bacteria, also like funguses, candida, parasites, things like that. And it's like stuck to your intestinal walls. I don't think it's just in the colon. I honestly think it's in the small intestine as well. And a lot of people will get it out through prolonged juice fasting. But I was like, I don't have the fucking calories to spare. I don't have the body fat to spare. Plus, I still have a son that nurses at night. So I'm just going to do this expedited 3-day one that I heard about. And I'll tell you that mucoid plaque is real because it came out of my body. And it's definitely not. It's not poop. It's definitely not poop. It's something else. It looks like you shat out your own intestines. It literally looks, it's like the inner glove of your intestines. It's crazy. And it's like for example, it'll be upwards of 2 feet long. Sometimes it's like 4 to 6 feet long in one single excavation. I don't know, like one single shit, basically. And it's really crazy to see it. But basically, the reason I'm sharing this is because what happened was, so I did this 3-day cleanse. And then a couple days later, I was like, I need to make a green juice. I haven't thought about making juice. I have a juicer. I haven't thought about making juice in ages. And I made this green juice. Would probably make most people who are not juicers be like, whoa, why would you ever drink that? But I drank it and it was like the elixir of life going into my body. Like my whole being felt electrified. And I was like it was amazing. And I realized that I could not I've had juice before, but I've never felt like that. But I could not previously absorb it because there was something in the way. And then that was moved out. And now I can absorb all that. And I suddenly could understand like why fasting, why people do fasting, why like our diets are so important, why they say all this, like you said, like living a good life, being close to nature, like drinking structured water, eating living foods, all that kind of stuff, that really, really does make a difference. But we are not raised to be that way. And it's not a fucking coincidence. And a long time ago, I used to think it was. I was all innocent and naive. And one of my personality traits is that I give everybody the benefit of the doubt until they've screwed me over so hard that I can't anymore, including like the government and all the things. So I was like, oh, our current food situation is just a byproduct of industrial revolution and the wars and the need to, mass produce food that had a long shelf life so that it wouldn't spoil. And look, like, but here are some inadvertent consequences. Like, that's all I thought it was. And now I'm like, oh no, these motherfuckers know what they're doing. They totally know what they're doing. They're feeding us poison. They get us to feed. And I'm not judging anybody. Like, I look at my children's diet right now and I'm like, I have to change this. And how do you change a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old's diet? But they're always reaching for the starchy, carby, sweet. Like, they love to have gnocchi with dinner. They love to have crackers. They like all that kind of stuff, right? They eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, but it's just interesting when you watch, you can see that right from the get-go, we are programmed to become perfect vessels for these parasitic entities, and they are literal and physical. And I'll tell you too, it's all related, because one time I was doing an Akashic reading with somebody and we found it was like a little smoke fetus in her womb from, it was like she'd had an abortion many years ago. She didn't feel any guilt about it, but it was also connected with a past life. And it was just an energy that was being retained. And she was having symptoms in her body. And so we found this thing together, and it was really surreal. I helped her birth it. Like, I energetically midwifed it and she energetically birthed it out. And it was at the beginning of me as an Akashic record reader. So I was like, are we just making this up? Like, what the fuck is happening? But anyway, like 15 minutes later, she messaged me and was like, I just shat out a bunch of parasites. And she had done parasite cleanses and parasite tests and everything, and had never, like, they all came back negative. Nothing came out with parasite cleanses. But when we moved this old unprocessed thing on an energetic level out of her field, out came the parasites that were attached to it.
The physical parasites attached to the energetic baby that was no longer, wow.
Yeah. And then all of her, she believed she had endometriosis. She had a diagnosis of it, and it was so severe that she was going to have a complete hysterectomy. And she had just turned 32. And she reached out for a reading because she was like, I just need to know that there's not something else there before I do this, because it's such a big deal. Like, it's going to put her into menopause, basically. And so we did it, and that's what we found. And then out came these parasites, and she no longer has any symptoms of endometriosis. It's wild. And again, it was at the beginning of my Akashic reading career, air quotes. So it's not like I was as shocked as she was,
That's a big W up top, though. Not bad. Yeah. It's so fascinating. The energetic component to this cannot be overlooked. And now you almost think of these doctors as people prescribing these medicines or anything like that. Maybe they don't know, and we're going to give them all the benefit of the doubt. But if you take this information, and if like a doctor, for instance, is hearing this right now and then goes back to work, then the way we view you, friend, is that you're one of the people that bring souls to vampires. You know what I mean? You're one of the people that like offer folks up for these parasites. So I venture to say there are very few people out there that actually know this and do it with malicious intent. But also I would say that this is an even more empowering concept, because it seems now, like you said, with the light, something's going on with the sun, something's going on with their awareness. I'm not going to say that they're related, but I'm not also going to say that they're obviously not related, because this looks so crazy stair step. You could see even in the Newtonian model, cause and effect. Well, we seem to be getting more enlightened. There seems to be more light here. Seems like a bunch of crazier shit is going on. Maybe that's because the abundance of light here is shining light on all the darkness here. And maybe there are physiological responses from that light that's then making parasites within us that could be extraterrestrials in general and the whole goddamn thing here. And maybe this is what the split is, literally. It's like this idea of either you're cleansing or not, either you're going to be riddled with these parasites or not. And maybe that this is, again, some sort of physical thing, because if parasites in the physical dimension, I'm just going to say this because you're here. If parasites in the physical dimension can feed off of energetic components that aren't even there to sustain their physical ability, then what the hell is going on with, like, what energetic sources around here are all these things feeding on? All you need to do then is isolate those and whatever frequency bands they're in, which I would venture to say would be violence, intolerance, low vibe type shit. Again, operating out of that real base chakra exclusively with disregard for anything else. Then I'd say that sort of behavior, which, we can look out and see rampant, maybe is what's causing all this shit. So if we just kind of clean those things up, then perhaps, I don't know. I mean, maybe a better world is on the way. I mean, I'm fine with like no Cheerios. I think that'd be fine. I could do no Cheerios for the sake of everybody, like, and no ho-hos or something like that. Like we can get over that, right?
I can give up Cheerios. Yeah. But it's interesting because when you think about it, of course there would be, even if we remove, and I'm not doing this because I think it's not true, but just to simplify it and help to reduce any doubt, if we remove the concept of extraterrestrial parasites and we just look at like the connection between this energetic thing that we are carrying inside and the physical parasites, well, of course, physical parasites would be able to feed off of it, because if you're carrying an unprocessed trauma, then you're going to, the way that we behave, like we try to encapsulate our trauma that we don't feel equipped to look at. That's what we do. We're like, ooh, I don't want to look at it. I'm going to like encase it. And I like, don't come near it. Don't touch it. And I'm going to change my behavior so that nothing can even poke at it, because I'm so afraid of how it's going to feel to deal with this trauma. And so even just that changes the way that we eat or who we talk to, or the kind of conversations we're willing to have, the kind of media we're willing to, like what audiobooks we listen to, what podcasts we listen to. Do you know what I mean? Like, because we all know people who, if we try to talk to them about something that's just a little bit too expansive for them, they're like, fuck you. And like, they can't handle it. It's a trauma response because you're getting too close to something that they're just so afraid of within themselves. They're afraid of what is going to mean for them to have that Pandora's box opened, with the understanding that, I mean, it's fair that they're afraid of it, because you can't put it back in the box, right? So it kind of makes sense that we're afraid on that level, but it also doesn't, because it's just us. Like, it's just our own stuff. But anyway, so then even just from that level, like physiologically, of course, parasites would be attached to that. And when somebody is ready to look at it and release it, and they are like on an energetic level, completely change their consciousness, then the parasites are like, well, they're like, there's nothing left here for us. So
and move on. Yeah. So what's it like? And I mean, you feel free to get graphic here. That's fine. I'm sure it's for educational purposes. And I do want the recipe for that 3-day thing that you did, so I can take one of these yard-long shit, not shits that you were talking about.
Okay.
But what does it feel like psychologically to have something like that pass through you? Did it feel like you were actually shitting like all of your body out because it was a normal? Like it seems like if an enormous volume of something came out of me, I would notice a weight difference. You know, especially like you and I, we're not packing on a bunch of extra weight. And so it seems like it seemed to be noticeable. Did you notice it, first of all? Was that something you felt?
I mean, I knew I was doing this cleanse and I knew that was a possibility. So I wasn't taken by surprise by it, but it just felt like having a big poop.
Okay.
It wasn't, but also I'll say this, like I'm a very regular person, like constipation isn't an issue for me. And then also because of the autoimmune flare up, my entire diet, like I did not consume any sugar for over a year. Like, I mean, not even fruit, nothing, not honey, not fruit, nothing. The sweetest thing I ever ate was sweet potatoes. I really lived off of vegetables, the highest quality meat I could afford, and sweet potatoes and squash for over a year. So I think that helped because it wasn't a really abrupt, wasn't going from eating Cheerios and Ho-Hos to, you know, all of a sudden like pooping out an intestinal sleeve of hardened mucus. But it just felt like a big poop. And also I'm somebody that I'm really willing to look at my trauma. It's not easy.
This holiday season, you might be looking for nutritious, convenient meals to keep you energized on jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service, can help you fuel up for brekkie, lunch, or dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. They just drop them at your door, people. You'll save time and eat well. You'll stay on track with your healthy lifestyle while taking all of your holiday to-dos in stride with good meals in the tum-tum. If you're too busy with all this stuff, these meals are easy to get done. They taste great. All you've got to do is head over to factormeals.com/expandingreality50 and use code expandingreality50 to get 50% off. That's code expandingreality50 at factormeals.com/expandingreality50 to get 50% off.
It's not easy for me either, but I just know that there's nothing I actually have to be afraid of, that it's actually a scarier thought to me to spend my whole life trying to not look at it than look at it. So for me, there wasn't a lot of mysterious emotional stuff attached to it, but I've heard, because I also binged it on YouTube after, I was like, oh, okay, I need to hear other people's mucoid plaque experiences. So I have my YouTube algorithm is full of shit right now. But some people, especially when they're on a prolonged fast, they will say that like they have very emotional experiences with those releases. And then two, I've heard people report that when they pass a lot of parasites, when they pass the adult parasites, like, and this I have experienced because I have passed parasites. Last year I passed a good amount of parasites too. I would have really dark, weird dreams the night before, or I would feel really depressed, like during, like out of nowhere. I would just feel really like, just not good and depressed. And I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And then lo and behold, I would pass some parasites. But I only ever passed the adults. I've never passed the juveniles or the eggs, but apparently it gets more intense with each. Like with the juveniles, you feel even worse. And with the eggs, you can even feel suicidal before you pass them. And so but it's not actually you. It's the parasites or the eggs or whatever stage they're at, probably dying and releasing a bunch of chemicals, right? Like into your system. And then you suddenly have to process all those chemicals and it like depresses your energy. And then when they're gone, you're like, oh, I feel back to normal.
It's so interesting. It's almost like you're taking on the weight of a genocide, like of all
Yeah.
these entities that would prefer to live and that have a sweet deal going on. And they don't know who you are, but all of a sudden this plasma apocalypse comes down from the
Right.
sky, and all of a sudden they're dying and they're holding their little babies and shit, and they're just little parasites living their lives. I don't know. But that's the thing, right? It's like it's interesting because you feel the emotional weight of that. That's fascinating, though. Even the different stages, that's just so interesting to me. I'm just still kind of processing that thought. But again, it's sort of to this, those parasites do apprehend your thoughts in the way that they send these signatures to your neurotransmitters to then transmit them through your body. And it's fascinating whenever you think about just that you're a bunch of chemical signatures, but really this is how you overwhelm your mind, and you overcome the things that would limit you before to doing the good things for you. For instance, when we did that cold water plunge or whatever, my inner bitch was like, I don't want to do this. Then that was the parasites or whatever saying, dude, we don't want to do this because it's not good for the colony inside here. And, they seem to have a sense of awareness. It seems like whatever's inside you knows what's happening on the external, and it can read your feelings, your blood levels. I mean, your heart rate, everything. It seems to have a really good feel for what's going on outside the environment and how to respond on the inside. And all this has to do with your thoughts, the way you're thinking, feeling, all that shit. And so it's fascinating, again, of course, that it would manifest in a physical colony type of a way in your body, which is then more of like it's a real thing. You can see it. It's a physical thing that comes out of you. And I've seen these, it was years ago, I saw these cleanses, and I think Mary and I were talking about one, and it had these proud pictures of these people, and they're holding their whatever up with like sticks that they had to go get a stick from outside, and like hold this up and show you. Yeah. And I'm just like sitting here thinking, holy shit, like that's in us. Like that's what's going on. So how do you avoid this in the future? Is it just basically, does mucoid plaque happen or occur rather because we just eat like shit and we're being bombarded with stuff constantly? It builds up, which then enables us or inhibits us at a level to be able to absorb the natural things here. It's almost like a synthetic coating, sort of how they put wax on the outside of apples before they sell them to you. Have you seen this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
So it's like that, but for the inside of your body, provided by the matrix, that will then coat out all the good things, but then also keep you at a state to where those parasites can have a happy life. Is that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is all conjecture, of course, right? Because there are a million people touting a million different diets and saying like, this is the absolute way that all humans are supposed to eat. And I don't buy into any of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, if you're listening to this, listener, and you're like me and you're like, I need to go YouTube mucoid plaque and just like binge on this, then you will come across a lot of very passionate vegans, but particularly raw vegans, who will really say that it's dairy and it's animal products that cause all this. And they'll say that like you're eating death when you eat animals, but you're eating life when you eat plants and things like that. And I'm not a nutritionist, but what I perceive is that that's probably not true, because I just don't think it's true. First of all, I'm kind of biased because I'm very allergic, like not intolerant, but like anaphylactically allergic to nuts and seeds. So I couldn't be vegan if I wanted to. I have to eat animal products. I have to eat meat. So I'm kind of like, I don't know. And I'm really very psychically tuned in. So I don't actually think that it lowers your vibe such that you can't be psychically connected, which is a lot of what is said. However, when I look at different cultures that are, I call them Earth Star cultures, I think that they carry the closest like original human template. So a lot of indigenous cultures, a lot of them eat, like they're omnivorous. Yeah. And if a group of people is living very close to the earth and they're not consuming any processed food, then I think they probably don't have a mucoid plaque, even if they eat animal products, right? So I don't think it's actually that. I think it's the processed food. And one of the things before, when I got that little like signal from my body and I was like, okay, I hear you, was I was eating a lot of mayonnaise, Hellmann's mayonnaise, like probably pretty much every day, like not tons. I wasn't like scooping it out, but I was using it frequently. Right now, I can't have butter. So if I'm having an egg sandwich, like, what am I going to use? Coconut oil with eggs? Gross. So anyway, but I could feel like, I was like, this is what mucoid plaque is. It's this shit. It's like rancid oils and French fries and chips and alcohol and pop and, just all this stuff that isn't food that we eat all the time. And again, it's our body initially is creating this mucus layer to protect itself from the corrosive, like not real food stuff that's not supposed to be in there. But then we keep consuming it, so it keeps having to thicken the layer. And then these bacteria are feeding, the bacteria and the like candida and parasites are feeding off of that processed food, and they create biofilms, which then I think is what causes the rubberization of it. So it just makes a really perfect little home for them. And then we are not able to assimilate our nutrients no matter what we eat. And I think that's why we have the cravings that we have, because also it was really weird after I did that cleanse and I started like, I'm drinking multiple juices a day right now because it just feels like phenomenal to do so. And I don't actually crave the things that I was eating before, but my brain still thinks I do. Like the habit of it still thinks that I want that, but my body doesn't actually want it, because I don't think my body ever wanted it. It was, opportunistic, the microbiome that had developed based on the modified standard American diet that I was consuming prior to my autoimmune flare up. I think that's what wanted
it. The way you describe it makes the most fucking sense, Amy. The most fucking sense, because it's this apprehension. Of course it would develop these, and yeah, parasites are naturally drawn to that, and then they would feed on that, which then would send the signal out that anything you put in your body that wasn't good for you or wasn't healthy for you. And this is why you'll find people like that start eating healthy, they feel like absolute dog shit. It's because those signals from those parasites are saying, hey, we don't like this stuff because it's killing us off. We can't sustain ourselves on this kind of living. It's like extremophiles, those little creatures that live at like allegedly the bottom of the ocean where these thermal vents are, where it's like crazy amounts of pressure, darkness, but there's heat from these thermal vents, but it's all absolutely toxic shit and nothing else can survive on it. Or, very few things can survive on it, but it does a hell of a job and it thrives down there with very few to no predators. So it's this interesting thing to think that you're an environment for that, but that you tailor and you terraform the environment for the creatures that live within you. It's just like anything. It's the ultimate tending of your garden. If you're going to, live in a clean home, then clean your home, right? But cleanliness is next to godliness is now taking a new meaning in my ears. Is because now it's like a personal cleanliness. And we're talking about mind, body, and spirit here. And they're all tied in together. So it's just so interesting the way you put this and the visual, almost just like battle, really it's a dance, but also it's a choice. But this symphony of organisms that are going on within your organism, really seems to be the showstoppers here. And they're the ones really calling all the shots. So it's interesting if you can get ahead of listening to those signals, which is just, again, you listening to them because it is the same voice as you. It knows your voice, so it speaks to you in that. But if you can just feel the energy between the conversation, that's really what I started listening to with cravings, habits, things like that. I'd be like, hang on, do I really want that? Or is it something where I'm just habitually like guided to do that or whatever? And so I've eliminated a few things in my life just simply because of this. I've been just like, no, there's just a habit. That's just the way I thought about it. And then again, like what we were talking about earlier, the thoughts would come in, but I can recognize them. They present themselves not in my voice anymore. And so they come in meek at me and I'm like, no, we're not doing that. We don't come with that energy, but thank you. Good. Thanks for checking in. Say hi to your mom and them, but you just go ahead and head on back. So it's an interesting thing that where you do take control of this vessel rather than being driven. Like, because now I'm even thinking of all those times when people say that they do have psychic visions or they can see things that I can't right now, at least. And they'll say that they see like a 13-foot or 11-foot tall lizard person, like with their arms jammed into the shoulder blades in the back of someone, walking them around and steering them. And this is what I picture whenever I think of these lower energy entities sort of, commandeering your vessel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think those are real. I do. I don't know why they present as lizards. I don't think that they are. I think they are more on the microbiome level than like the microbial level than they are on like a macro incarnate level. Do you know what I mean? So I think that they infiltrate all kinds of organisms, honestly. But I that mental picture of a lizard something or other, or any kind of dark entity that is like puppeting, commandeering a human, I really think that's what's happening. And I think that, so you know how there's all these like stories of really cool alien experiences where people like, they're like, whoa, and they're mind blown, their life has changed in positive ways. And then there are these stories of super not cool abduction experiences where people are heavily traumatized, and there's like hybridization programs. And, for whatever reason, the whole side tangent that I'm not going to get into, but in October, November, December, I was really guided to listen to those experiences. Like I needed to not have my blinders on and be like, you need to acknowledge that some people have very not cool experiences with abduction. And the theory that I have going based on listening to all of those, plus a bunch of my own downloads, is that I think that there are real like positive hybridization programs that are whatever. I'll talk about those later if we get there. But the hybridization programs that seem to be in violation of free will and seem to be really hurting people, I think that they are trying to create a vessel for themselves to be able to come here and oust us and be like, fuck you, this is our world, because they don't have bodies. They are not like, when you said that our bodies are the UFO, our bodies are, that's totally what I see interdimensional travel as being, is like, we can dock into this body, we can dock into other bodies that we have in other dimensions. And they want to be in this dimension because it's physical, and they have like, because they just can, there's free will and you can create here. So they can just create whatever they want. That's what they want, but they don't have bodies. They weren't created to be here. So I believe they're trying to engineer bodies for themselves. And that's why they want human DNA in particular, because humans have been given the creator gene, I believe, by the creator. I don't believe that we were created by Anunnaki. I do believe that if there was interference. I feel like, I think I talked about this with you on this show, but I had a memory of being like part of I think they were the Anunnaki and like flooding the anthills. Yes. Kind of being dicks, honestly. Yeah. But we didn't create humans. We just fucked around with it a little bit. And that's probably those same beings that are, that same consciousness that wants to be able to incarnate here. So I think that's what's going on. And I think that they are, in the meantime, because they don't have bodies created for themselves yet, they do that thing. I think they select humans, severely traumatize them or severely compromise them morally. And then they can kind of like use them, but it's still like a puppet sort of thing, rather than like, they can't actually, like they can even get in the body, but they can't actually fully oust the original human being yet, or the original soul. And there was one more thing that I was going to say. Oh yeah, the heart is the linchpin of all of it. The heart is the most important chakra. If we don't have a connection with the heart, then we are sort of like sitting ducks for them.
Wow. So do you think it's something that we need to constantly be on guard for? Do you think that it's with this awareness we set parameters and boundaries and can move forward boldly and create from there, rather than be just constantly in a world of like taking 5-foot shits?
Because we don't want to be taking 5-foot shits day in and day out.
If it's going to be a regular thing, I'd kind of like, because you got to plan your day for that, You do. It can't be like planning to be on a flight or in a meeting or
No, that's right. No, I think that this is our fucking realm. We were made to be here. We have all the power. They have to work so hard. Like, you ever sit back and just really appreciate the genius of what they have, like their whole false matrix thing? It's so intricate. Yeah. Why? Because we're actually super powerful.
Yeah.
And they have to work very hard to constantly keep us disconnected from that power and an awareness of that power. And so as soon as we start to take it back, it just feels like unsubscribing from emails to me.
Yes.
Personally. And there are some fucking emails that you unsubscribe like 25 fucking times before they finally, I don't know what happens, but finally you don't hear from them anymore. And some of our programs that we have running are like that, where it can feel really frustrating, like it's very deeply rooted. Or, going back to the garden analogy, there are weeds that you might not like, you'd have to dig very deep to get that tap root all the way at the bottom and completely pull it out. And do we even need to? I don't know. I don't think the purpose is to eradicate the darkness. I believe that the darkness is supposed to exist, or I don't even like to call it the darkness, but that other polarity has to exist for this whole current universal time matrix to work the way it does. But right now it's kind of out of control. And so the objective isn't necessarily to eradicate all of it and see it as an actual war where we have to vanquish the foe completely. I think it's just like, you just got to weed the garden. You just got to weed you just got to keep, like you said, with your thought ninja, you notice it and you're like, not today, thought.
Nope, not today. They know. I mean, and they come meek now, which is fascinating. They used to come very strong, very forward. And it took me a minute to figure out that they weren't what I wanted. I was receiving them, but they weren't what I wanted. But they were habits. And I was like, oh my God, I've been thinking that thought for a long time. Or, oh my God, that's been popping up in my mind for a long time. So I recognize it, put Thought Ninja on it. And it is something that now just whoop and presents itself, but it comes so sheepishly. It's so interesting the way that it manifests. And it's because I'm the CEO of this bitch, and yes. All of these things know that. Yeah. You just take over, you take control. That's all it is.
Totally. I really think it is that. It's just accepting that we are powerful. We are powerful creators. Part of it, I think, honestly, like the thing that is causing the most resistance for the most people is that also means we can't entertain our victim stories at all anymore.
But do you feel like there's no more audience for it? That's what I see. That just like victims and bullies, the only reason bullies exist is because victims exist, that there's no one to hear their sob stories anymore. I'm not an ear for them. And so it seems like the people who are looking for those sympathetic ears to keep them stuck in the States, a lot of the people that they're talking to have quit drinking. They're moving forward. They're going to the gym. They're doing things for themselves. And there's very few options for some folks right now to turn to. And so they're finding themselves, I've talked to a couple of people that have found themselves moving from groups and then found themselves just burying deeper, admittingly, and then they'll come back out of it and tell me about this, but then they go back in and they find themselves in these conversations with these groups of people that were way far away from where they were. And it's because their current circle just they left without them because they weren't willing to evolve. But now again, like everybody's back together and it's happy times and all that kind of stuff. But even within this, I feel that there's not really many ears for complaints. There was a situation my wife and I found ourselves in the other day to be an opportunity for a grander version of ourselves, where there was a lot of complaining going on and a lot of complaining with a lot of eye contact. Like, can you believe? And I can't. And then this person, and my wife and I just sat there and we listened because we didn't have anything to say. We absolutely aren't someone who's going to sit there and amplify that with you because that's just not our vibe. And this person knew that. And very quickly, the conversation changed because it just ended because we weren't feeding anything. And it was just sort of an awkward, okay, well, that was that. And we moved on, didn't take any of it on, but that person didn't have the ear. They didn't have the reinforcement for the parasite. And so now they find themselves alone with those feelings. Now, reinforced by positivity, because whenever there was a question asked, I addressed, hey, well, what do you think about that? Where's the gift? Yeah, you've told us a lot of stuff you didn't like about it, but where's the gift? Like, what have you learned? What are we moving forward to embrace? There was no, answer for that. And so again, there's a level at which there's no tolerance, and we don't give attention to it. We're here for you. We're sweet and all those wonderful things. But as far as like being a commiserator, that's absolutely not something I've ever identified with.
Yeah. What an amazing point you just made. I really hadn't thought of that. And that's a really, really powerful point, that the victim stories really don't exist in isolation for very long. They really do need to be fed because they are parasitic.
Yep. And
yeah, so that's a really powerful act of love that we can all do, is just like you and Mary did, just like, I'm going to listen, but I'm not commiserating. I'm just going to let you have a moment to, vent it out, but I'm not giving it any fuel at all. So you just very quickly realize, like, we got to move on to a different topic.
That's it. It's just love and grace, and it's just, you embrace it with that. One thing I will say, I'm very proud of my younger brother, Charlie. He is, him and I have the same dad, the same sperm donor that bailed whenever he was born, and then he bounced. So my brother, Charlie, and I quit drinking a little over 2 years ago. It's probably actually been exactly 2 years. It's somewhere around late May, June, somewhere in there. Anyway, so I quit drinking, and it was funny. We had a conversation then, I think last Christmas. So almost 2 years into my change. And he said, that's interesting. You quit drinking and all this stuff. And it's a family. This is an ancestor thing from us. Like our real dad sperm donor guy. I got visited in the Akashic records by his dad, our grandfather on that side, who I didn't recognize, thanking me with tears in his eyes for healing that side of the family. And what's fascinating is my brother, Charlie, we were talking about this. He said, it's interesting you quit drinking. How'd you do it? All these things. And I just told him, I was just like, dude, I just stopped. I didn't see myself, it being healthy for me moving forward. And after 20 years of every single day, I just stopped. And especially knowing history and blah, blah, blah. And then I think 3 months ago, we were on the phone, and he said he quit in January, like right after we had that conversation. So that's 2 healings in one lineage. That now his daughter, he just had a daughter. I mean, I'm now an uncle, by blood and all that. And so, but it was the conversation with him of the non-reinforcing of that behavior. It was like, I don't anymore because I see myself this. And the comment he made right after was that, well, it seems like everybody's getting their shit together, and that's the first thing they do. And it's interesting because it was that, but then to see him do it, right? So as an example, we're out here living the examples of life. And if people ask us our secrets, I'll tell you, but it comes at sacrificing this old programmed version of you and flushing some parasites out. Now, I haven't taken a 12.5-foot shit yet, but I'm sure it's coming. What I mean to say is that it's a conversation had that then they can then begin to change their mind in the direction of their own healing. And it was just awesome. Like, I didn't know that was even on his mind. We had that conversation. 3 months later, he told me that he quit drinking and was like already past all the nonsense, to where it wasn't like, oh, I quit yesterday. Like, no, he was already well into it months wise. So I'm just very proud, and just getting stories like this, like I know you do, people that are healed and just coming forward saying, you know what, I'm done with this old nonsense. And this I really think is what's going on here with all this. And the parasites are being flushed out. They can't handle it. Our sun's too goddamn bright. We're having too much fun.
That's right. Our sun's too goddamn bright.
Fuck off.
I also think that's probably why we're seeing like such extremes in, like, for example, not to get political, like really not to get political, but it's just an easy example in all this stuff around the like the transgender stuff, and particularly though the way that it impacts kids and their ability to access life-altering medical procedures without their parent or adult caretaker's permission. It's I love everybody. I'm just going to say that. And like, however you actually, like, whatever you feel is your authentic self, I support that and want you to feel like your authentic self. So I'm not trying to make any statements, but I do see that there is some dark shit happening there, right? Because children definitely, like, I'm the mother of children, and I'll tell you that my daughter right now, her chosen nickname is Rainbow Violet, and she is a magical fairy unicorn. And that's fine because she's 5. Yeah. And she's allowed to see herself that way. But if she was allowed to make life-altering decisions based on how true that feels to her right now, she would do it. Does that mean that when she's 45, she will support that decision? No. So anyway, I think that as more sun comes in and more of us do these upgrade things where we're like, I just don't see myself as continuing with this behavior or this choice or this perception of myself or whatever, getting my shit together, getting my act cleaned up, not indulging in my, my victim stories that kept that alive anymore. The parasites aren't necessarily dying. Those are astral parasites that are like, fuck, we gotta get to we gotta find a new host, because this host is no longer, a host for us. It's not an environment that we can thrive in anymore. And so I think that's also why we're seeing these extremes. I feel like the gray zone is disappearing. Yeah. And it's kind of like, it can sound like religious or like super moralistic. I don't perceive it that way, but it feels like, in the 90s, Brandon, when we could just walk down the road listening to our CD Walkman and
walking very carefully because it skipped, even though you had the skip action on it. Yeah.
We
that
didn't
drained
have a
your
cell
battery.
phone.
Yeah.
And if you did, it definitely wasn't a smartphone. It was a phone of below average intelligence. And the quality and the texture of reality was very different. And you could just watch a movie without decoding it. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a different kind of reality. Now it's becoming much harder to do that. We're all becoming more and more aware of the consequences of our choices, not bad consequences, but just the effect of our choices. We're understanding ourselves as causal agents, even if we don't use those words to describe it. And as such, we can't just hang out in the gray zone. That neutrality period is over. It was a really nice grace period in a lot of ways, but also all those parasitic things existed in there and we were unaware of it. But now it feels like we're being forced to move to extremes. And I perceive that most people are going to go to the light because the darkness, for lack of a better term, is really dark. It's not pretty there. It's not pretty. It's different when you're in the gray zone and you're kind of, whatever. Like, for example, when I was 13, my best friend and I, we stole some shit from Canada's Wonderland, just like some hair barrettes and whatever, we thought we were pretty badass. That's leaning more towards the dark. And I kind of knew that because I'd been raised right enough to know that I was doing something wrong. But it was also like super low key in the sense that I wasn't directly causing extreme harm to anybody. That gray zone is not available anymore. It's like I'm so aware, like I can't do that. I can't even lie to people anymore. Nope. Even like white lies, air quotes, very, very, very challenging to do. Because the gray zone, it feels like one of those movies where the floor splits in half and it's moving in two directions. You got to pick which side are you going to, because there's only actually two sides available and it's all actually the same one side. It's all going to come back together in the end, but it does matter which side you pick because it's going to affect your journey. Do you know what I mean?
I totally do. Yeah. And then this is the question. I know we have a hard out, so we'll wrap it here in a minute, but this is the question then, because with this, we've talked to Joe Thomas, we've talked about the split, we've talked about Dolores Cannon, we've talked about this idea. The more you and I have discussed this here today, and especially with the new stuff that Elsa Dillon and I were talking about recently, it's all sort of forming this picture of what this may present itself as. And whenever we talk about this, some people say it's going to be this energetic split to where people just like queef out of existence, which is weird to me. But what may happen is what we may be seeing with this elevation in consciousness, with this extrusion of parasites, whether astral or physical. And it seems that people leveling up, they're not themselves anymore. So yes, their old self queefed out of existence. That whatever was driving around to cause the decision makings that then cause the reactions, that then cause blah, blah, blah. All the Newtonian things that can be viewed in this way are then nullified and emancipated, as you said, great word, with that simple apprehension, because then you're not dropping bodies. Again, like Brandon said, it's 1776 without the bodies. We don't need to physically remove people because they're so infested with parasites, or because we're so infested with parasites that we believe that's the way that we handle things, is by literally physically vanquishing things from this realm in the sense of human beings and other. But if we're talking about visually vanquishing parasites from us in the form of 85-foot shits, you see how the number keeps increasing as I've said it. Then those are wonderful things that you can physically see. And then the question is okay, well, is that what the fifth dimension is? And, is this what, because now we're tying it into Oversoul Sun being sort of a lens here that's raising the vibe. People may look at it as global warming or temperature increase or something like that, but really it's maybe vibe, making it an unsuitable terraformed area for these parasites that we're living high on the hog. But maybe then again, that these things die out, but all the physical people are here. They're just different. Like all of a sudden, my mom wants to like do ayahuasca with me in the jungle, rather than tell me about how hell's a place, right? So do you think it's going to be something like that? I mean, now that we're having this conversation in this way, I'm thinking that this is what we mean by a new world, but it's without, half of us going somewhere. And like you said, yes, the floor is splitting, but it's the ones that are choosing to maintain the old paradigm, not necessarily their physical vessel. You see what I'm saying? Maintaining, choosing to hold the parasite. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I agree totally that it's like, it's not actually about the physical vessel. It's about the consciousness that occupies the physical vessel, which is why I kind of, even as a kid, I was like, didn't understand the death penalty because I just had this inherent knowing that we reincarnate. So I was like,
he's going to come
You're
back.
just giving them a get out of jail free card. Like, I don't get it. But anyway, I like that. I like that people are just going to vaginal fart out of existence.
Yes.
It's a beautiful, beautiful illustration. But I don't even think I told you this, but at the end of March, I think it was, I describe it as I went to New Earth and I understood it was called Tara, Tara. And when I say I went, I mean, my body stayed here because my body is designed for here. But I just call it phase shifted. I phase shifted to a different reality where I could feel things through my senses. Like I shifted into a different body. I had a different body there, but it's very similar to this one, but just very well glowing, if you will. And so now I understand that it is a real, English requires that I describe it as a place, but it's not a place as in geographical location. It is a strata of consciousness. And the way that reality manifests at that strata of consciousness is different than the way it manifests at this strata of consciousness. So I think that you're correct. And I think we're all in the process of phase shifting right now. And that is why your mom is like, let's go do ayahuasca together. I don't need to stress about, your soul burning in hell forever because you don't believe what I think you're supposed to believe based on what I've been told. And why your brother is like, I'm ready to give up alcohol. So many of us are gradually shifting. And the way that I perceive it is that I still call it the firmament because I don't know a better word, but it just feels like there is a membrane between the third dimension and the fifth dimension, let's say. And the fourth dimension is actually like a lubricating substance that allows us to pass through that membrane. The membrane is porous, but if you are coarse in your consciousness, you can't pass through. So the objective is to become very fine in our consciousness, and then we can pass through. And we don't, I actually think that our bodies don't need to die. If we can do this, like along the lines of everything we've been talking about in this conversation, cleansing, 85-foot shits, all the things, our body can become light as well. Like it can follow our consciousness and adapt. And maybe there will be a husk of it that gets left behind, but not in the same way as when we die. And I don't know, that's just a speculation, but I just know I saw a bunch of people there and I was like, well, we all look human. Like we don't look, it's not like Avatar. Like we don't have like 12-foot tall blue bodies. Like we all look basically like we do now, just like much, much brighter. Yeah, glowy. I don't know. I don't really know how else to put it. So that's my best conjecture. I think old versions of ourselves repeatedly queef out of existence, and our body, like, because what even are our bodies? Like really, when you go down to it at the subatomic level, it's just a bunch of electrons and quarks. I don't even think we have bosons in our body, like I think it's literally just quarks and electrons for human beings. Neutrinos just pass right through us. So we're just these subatomic particles that are blipping in and out of existence. And when we're blipped into existence, they're, arranging themselves in certain patterns. And when we are here and we're under all of the sort of toxic load, the parasitic load of, various like EMFs and shit in our soil and our air and all that kind of stuff and our food, all the things, then that it creates distortion patterns in the way that those subatomic particles and then atoms arrange themselves. But as we lighten our own load through our consciousness, they can return to their original sort of geometries. And then plus we're very plasmatic. Like we're not actually like, again, go binge a bunch of stuff about mucoid plaque on YouTube and you'll see like testimonials of people who have done prolonged juice fasts. Not saying you have to, or even that I would, but I'm just saying that we shapeshift all the fucking time. It is totally within our purview to shapeshift. It's just we have to actually be willing to change the variables to, as Sam Tripoli said to me, it's just adjusting the variables. We have to be willing to adjust the variables in order to shapeshift. That's just like anything else in this reality.
Yeah, just dial it in. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's like you said about the porousness. This is what we're doing when we, cut those sandbags to raise to another level in the atmosphere or anything like that. It's that we're making ourselves a vessel to be able to pass through the next realm and not be stuck here, if you will. And that's what's interesting when we talk then about the Archon soul trap and things like that, that maybe that's what that is. The membrane is you need to complete the cycle. Maybe. I don't know. And I want to talk to you next time. We're going to tease this, but next time you come on, I want to see if you really think you're going to die in this life.
Okay.
I've had a lot of thoughts about it, and I'm just curious to see what you think.
Okay.
But again, it's interesting, sort of this membrane film thing that where you would need to be a vibrational match, or at least have shed or elevated, or not be bombarded and weighed down perhaps by parasites. Maybe that's the configuration with a shitload of parasites, rather astral or other. That lizard person driving you through. Maybe that's what gets caught on the membrane as you're trying to pass through and turns you back around to go the other way. If you could shed all that shit, perhaps this is what we're talking about the next step. It's interesting.
Well, I kind of think that's what the Christ consciousness is too. Like that, I really believe that Jesus, I do believe that Jesus is a real person. And I believe that Jesus, literal or symbolic, is a way shower. And it's not like we all have to just be these helpless lambs being led to the slaughter and waiting for the Savior to come. And hopefully the Savior comes before we die, or whatever kind of, passive sort of victim perceptions we have. I really think that it was like, this is how you do it. Like you don't worship money. You don't worship the material things. You understand that they're dope and you get to be with them and create with them. But if you try to hold on to them and identify with it, then you're going to get trapped. It's like a sandbag, like you said, and that there is a way to pass through this membrane. But it's through the consciousness and it's through the heart.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Amy Belair, all the ways to find you located down in the show notes. Look forward to this and all the other ones. I mean, absolutely all the other ones. You're doing crushing shit, especially with your Akashic Records training. Do you want to tell us about that a little bit?
Yes. Okay. So I am launching an Akashic Records training and certification. It's called Akashic Holographic Mastery, because it's all the things that I've learned in the Akashic Records and in the holographic field, really, really cool things that we can do. And it's designed for people who know that they're here to facilitate Akashic Records readings, or like in some way for other people. It's for other people. You could already have an existing business as a healer. Like you could be a Reiki healer, for example, or you could be a coach or whatever kind of thing. Like it's perfect for that, but it's also perfect if you don't have an existing business at all. And it's a 4-month long, or there's an 8-month long option. So there's the foundations level and there's the advanced level. And what I do is I teach you like the nuances and the important things of how to facilitate a reading for somebody else. And we also incorporate a lot of practice so that, you can feel confident and competent on the other side. So you're not just like, oh, I listened to her say a bunch of things, but can I actually do this? So that you feel really like, prepared to do these readings on the other side. And it's also business setup. And it's not cookie cutter business coach bullshit. I'm not actually a business coach. I just successfully set up a business for myself. And I've seen the things that are cookie cutter, the things that we're told we have to do. And I call bullshit on a lot of them. And I see the things that we actually do have to do, though, and that a lot of people have resistance to. and just like what we have to do to set up a business that is sustainable and scalable, but also very authentic to ourselves, so that we are doing things out of alignment with our heart and our soul, and not out of what we think we have to do per, bullshit industry standards. So I'm very excited to be offering this. It's just going to be like, I'm just there's so many cool things I've learned how to do in the Akashic Records that I'm just dying to share with people who really want to know how to do it too. So it starts June 23rd. But it's not like I'm going to close enrollment. If you hear this, I don't know when it's coming out. So if you hear this in July or August or something, you're like, oh, that's for me. The doors will still be open. We're just starting on June 23rd, and you can go back and listen and move at your own pace.
Awesome. Absolutely perfect. And as a testimonial here from my audience, Amy has spent time in my Akashic Records with me, as well as Mary's, my wife's, with her personally, independently. And holy shit, we were actually talking about you the other day about that records reading and how much it impacted us. We have a friend of ours, Natasha Koshinka. She's staying with us for a couple of days. She just moved in from New York and moving to Fort Worth. So she's staying with us for a little bit while our living situations getting figured out. Anyway, we were talking to her about all this. She was fascinated by it. And what we told her about what you told us and how we approached it changed the way everything happened. In fact, I'll let the audience in on this. I don't know if they know that. You're one of the biggest reasons I left that stupid job and quit, and actually had the balls to move forward and to quit, because we had our Akashic Records in here. You and I were on the phone. I had you on speaker. Mary could overhear it. And whenever I went into the room, I had this look of empowerment, but a little bit of scared on my face. And Mary just started crying. She knew I was going to quit after talking to you. And it was because of the information you gave, the empowerment that you gave me. And Jesus, I cannot thank you enough. It has been the best damn decision. And it was the fear killer that I needed to move forward, to be of greatest service. And none of this would have happened without you. The publishing house, all that shit, really. You, young lady, were a massive reason why I was able to quit when I did, and with confidence that I did. So thank you.
Yay. That makes me so happy. You have no idea. I just want to ping, 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 activate people all over the place so that we can get on with doing what we're here to do. So that makes me so happy, Brandon.
If you guys want it, linked in the show notes, she's teaching you how to do it. So that's incredible. And again, to your validity. So just thank you so fucking much, Amy. You're incredible. We'll do this again 1,000,000 more times. So thank you.
Love you, brother.